Hey everyone, and welcome back. It is finally time to do a recap of all the books I read in June. I am extremely excited to talk about the books this month. I feel like I say that every month. But honestly, the books this month for June were kind of eh. Like, I don't know. I had like one or two good ones, but everything else was just kind of average for me. But still a good reading month, and I still want to talk about them. So let's get started. Alrighty, so the first book we're going to talk about is called Odessa. And this was actually a book that I picked up randomly when I was at Barnes. I think it was one of those days they were doing like the buy one, get one half off hardcovers. And I saw it and I was like, oh, like this is an interesting cover. And I knew a little bit about the story. I mean, I didn't really know what to expect. I just knew it was about a daughter who is dead, and then her father brings her back to life and then kind of has to deal with the repercussions of that. That's a very like general summary of the plot. But yeah, let's talk about it. This felt very horror coded. It was very horror, a little bit gruesome. I mean, the setting is like in a war setting, so there's also elements of that. It never felt too tacky or too whimsical. I think it was the perfect combination of horror mixed with the spiritual elements of the story. A lot of the plot and like the background comes from Jewish culture, and so I feel like we get a lot of little moments of that, and I feel like it's integrated well with the main plot of the story. I feel like sometimes when you give your characters or the family in this instance a background with a certain culture, I feel like sometimes as a reader who doesn't relate to that, it's kind of takes you out of the story and it's disconnected, but I felt like it was really beautifully done in this. The book being integrated with the Jewish culture, I felt like it really blended the traditional values and the traditional like lore with more of struggles of what the youth go through now. I feel like anyone who has a culture like this or similar vibe, I feel like you can relate to the fact that you're constantly struggling with your traditional values and your traditional views with the more modern day view and how society works now. And I felt like it was a really great conversation and discussion that was placed in this plot, because I feel like it went really well with the idea that the father wanted to use traditional methods and a traditional ritual to bring his daughter back, even though that's not necessarily what she wanted. And now she has to pay the repercussions of her father's actions. So, and it's also her mental battle of what she's going through. So I felt like it was really well done in this book. The main topic that I felt I took away from this book was the power of women. Oh my goodness, the women in this book are so strong, so powerful. Yetta is a strong main character. She has so many emotions. She has such strength. Her internal battle between fighting for her people and also making herself happy, so relatable. Like that constant struggle I feel like most women go through, where it's like you want to make yourself happy, but you are also someone who has to give to others. I feel like that's such a relatable thing. And yeah, I just felt for her throughout the whole book. Frida, who is the mom in the story, oh my goodness, like honestly, her story got me the most. Like even though you're supposed to be really focused on the main character, I felt like Frida's story was the most emotional for me and the most like heartbreaking. Such a powerful message. Her chapters were shorter, like so every chapter it was in a different character's point of view. Her chapters were shorter, but I just felt her words so much and her struggle so much, and it just had such a big impact on not only yourself but on the whole story, and it really like puts all the family dynamic in one picture. So the mom in the story, she has a lot of internal dilemmas, a lot of anxiety. She has panic attacks. So I feel like as someone who also has panic attacks and anxiety, I could relate to that as well. But she was just such a great example of a mother who not only has to deal with war and external battles, but she also has this internal battle as well that she has to fight through for the sake of her family. And she just wants to be a good mother. Like, such a great story. And I just loved her storyline so much. I felt like it added so much depth to the chaos and the carnage and just everything that was going on in the story. I think another thing that I felt like was really admirable about her character was that she was held back from her freedom. Her character was pretty much like, I want to leave. She wanted to leave this town that she was in. She wanted to go to New York or somewhere else, away from the war and just get her fresh start. And her husband was holding her back from her freedom, even though he knew that it made her unhappy and she was not mentally stable. And it just shows how, like, even women today are held back by men and their husbands and society and the opinions of other people. Even if it's not what we want, which is unfortunate. My final thing about women in this is that I loved the womanhood, the sisterhood representation in this book. I feel like that is so often overlooked in communities, and it was such a great representation, especially with Frida and her friend Miriam. Oh my goodness, the love and the friendship that they had for each other. Miriam was the rabbi's wife and also Frida's friend. And she, even though she knew that she was going to get in trouble for this, or Miriam herself was someone who would help women escape, and she helped her friend escape and find a better life. And oh my goodness, like the power of womanhood and sisterhood, and it just beautifully showcased the power of women and what we can accomplish when we love each other and we work together. Incredible. It was fantastic, and I loved it so much. On the opposite end of the wonderful talk of women, I feel like we also get the men's side, where men continue to be selfish and are full of greed, even at the cost of women and their happiness. The father and the rabbi choosing to bring Yetta back to life and forcing her to fight for her people instead of telling her the truth of what she faced and letting her make her own decisions just reads so heartbreakingly. So pretty much they bring Yetta back with this traditional ritual in the attempt to create like a soldier. So she's going to come back, but she's invincible. Like, she cannot die. Her body regenerates when she's in pain or when she's cut or whatever. And they force her to pretty much be a soldier for her people and fight the war. And even though she's expressed that she doesn't want that for herself, and it's such a well-written plot and storyline that you just feel for it and you can relate that to today. Like, I love that. I mean, I don't love what happens, but I love that it's something that you can still connect to, even if you don't understand fully what's going on with the culture. Yeah, and then in the end, her father refuses to leave Odessa and let go of his duties that he puts onto himself to live with his wife and son in peace in England and eventually New York. So yeah, like at the end, the father just like continues to live in the town Odessa and refuses to be free and live with his family and choose happiness and family over suffering and responsibility. And his stubbornness holds him back from his ultimate life and love and freedom. And it's funny because he thinks that fighting and doing all this and causing all of this will make him more free, but in turn it just shackles him more. So yeah, I thought that was a really great juxtaposition between how the women are shown and portrayed versus the men, and it's honestly so relatable. So I ended up reading this book in one sitting. It's a shorter book. I was so captivated by the writing in this. I felt like the writing and the word choice, there wasn't too many like plot twists. There was a few here and there, but I felt like a lot of it was just like I wanted to know what happened. Most of the shock that happens in the book is all in the first half. So a lot of the shock value is like, oh my God, like it's setting building, it's story building, it's kind of getting you situated with the characters in the book. But then towards the second half, you're just the characters and like the story is just trying to recover from the shock from the first half, which I think was such a smart move because I don't want the whole book to be just about war and suffering and just like constant like twists and turns and shock values. Like I felt like it was such a good mix of here's what happens, here's the shock value, and this is how the characters and the community try to recover from this. So overall, I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. I loved how there were so many layers written between the characters, their relationships, the dynamics between each other and with the other community members, the lessons that we learn through going through war like this. Yeah, and I found out that this was a debut novel, which is insane. So I highly would recommend this book if you're someone who loves a more horror element book. Kind of a mystery as well, but I think it was just more like horror thriller. But yeah, so I ended up giving this a 4-star, And yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by this. I honestly went into this not expecting anything and not knowing what this book was going to be about, but I ended up reading it in one sitting and thoroughly enjoying it. So, yeah, that was Odessa. Alrighty, folks. So the next book we're going to talk about is The Wingman. So I continued the Vancouver Storm series, and I was like, let's read the third book because I did enjoy the first two books. So this one is pretty much about Hayden and Daisy, and their characters from the first two books, and they are friends. And in the beginning, Daisy is dating this other person, and Hayden has always had a crush on her, but they always remained friends through college. And then we end the second book off with Daisy and her partner from the first two books breaking up. And so in this book, Hayden is kind of trying to pick up the pieces for her, and her goal pretty much in this is to date more, get out more, be more sociable, because she's never really dated guys like that. And Hayden is going to be kind of her wingman and help her out, even though he likes her and he doesn't want to see her with anyone else. So that's the gist of this. So I like this book. I think this book was better than the first book for me, but I still enjoyed the second book the most. So I wasn't really interested in Hayden or Daisy's storyline from the first two books, I'm going to be honest. I wasn't particularly like excited to read this one or like, oh, like I can't wait to read their story. They were just kind of very average to me. I don't really love a friends to lovers storyline trope. So I was just kind of like, okay, like let's see what happens. I felt like Hayden was a very good supporting person, and he was very supportive of Daisy and what she wanted for herself. And I think he understood that even though he has feelings for her, this is not the time and place to express those things and make things complicated for her. So he really does be a really good friend and help her, you know, because Hayden's known as like the guy who gets around and gets women, is really flirty and charismatic. So I feel like he does a good job of helping her and being supportive of her trying to put herself out there. Some things that I liked about this book, I liked their banter. They're very silly, very joking. I just love when there's a lot of good banter between the two characters, and I felt like that was really fun. It kind of makes the book more lighthearted in the more serious aspects of this book. Overall, like I think the book was just like romancy, very cute. But I think there was a lot of things that didn't work for me. I think one of them was just the book felt a little too long for me. It felt more like it was just like dragged out. And I think some of the scenes like weren't necessary in the book. There's also like a lot of things that happen in this book that I just don't see happening in real life. Like a lot of miscommunication, which you guys know, I say it every month. I hate miscommunication. But yeah, I just felt like there was a lot of things that seemed a little unrealistic, in my opinion, that happened in this book. Especially like there was a scene where they go on a double date with another couple, and there was just like things that happened with that. I was like, I don't know if I see this actually happening in real life, but to each their own. Also, there was a lot of scenes in this book for the characters for the next book, Alexi and Georgia, and I felt like it took away from Hayden and Daisy's story. Like there was a lot of scenes with these other two characters, and like I get it, you're trying to set up the next story and with these characters, but I was more excited about these other characters because they got more scenes in their book. So I was a little confused with that and like why they had so many moments in this. So this whole thing is about how like Hayden is Daisy's wingman, but there are like little moments where Hayden wants advice from like his hockey teammates, but we didn't get any moments when he's talking with his teammates, especially Rory, who is like his big hype man in this and like trying to help him out and like his kind of wingman with Daisy. There was no scenes with like talks about that, and I was looking forward to those scenes the most, with Hayden being nervous about his dates with Daisy and like not trying to mess that up. I wanted scenes with that. Like, why are we not getting scenes of him talking with his teammates and getting advice? Like, I thought that would have been a really good switch up between like Hayden being the confident one versus like him seeking advice from his teammates. Like, I feel like what makes these hockey romance books so entertaining and so heartwarming is the dynamic of relationship you see with the hockey team and the guys and how they support each other. I feel like that is what makes the characters, like you understand the characters more and it makes it more fun. And I didn't get any of that in this, which was disappointing. But overall, I think their romance was cute. I think it was a fun, lighthearted book, kind of. I'm not obsessed with the friends to lovers trope, to be honest. I think it's just a little boring for me personally. But it was like a good read. I felt like it was done fine. So I gave it a 3 star. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I think not every book in a series you're going to love, and I think this one was fine. But I think there was just some elements that were disconnecting for me, unfortunately. But it was still a good time. So that was The Wingman. Alrighty, so after The Wingman, I ended up picking up a book that I was not expecting to pick up ever. This was the other book that I picked up with the buy one, get one half off hardcover. And this is called The Compound. Now, I actually didn't know that this was a book that was kind of circulating throughout the book community. But I just saw it and I thought, why not? So for context, this book is about a reality show being filmed. And it's about these, like, I think it's like 10 girls and 10 guys or something, five guys, 5 girls, something like that. And they get dropped off into this compound in the middle of nowhere and they have to survive. Like, they're pretty much given this house and it's leftovers of what the contestants from the last show leave for them. So if the conditions are bad, then they have to clean up the house. And so throughout this whole competition, they have to complete these challenges to receive things. So like, if you go clean the pool, you get a water bottle, or if you guys like admit a secret, you guys will get a couch, things like that, because they have literally nothing. And so eventually, like through these games and these challenges, people get kicked out. And so the last person standing, they get whatever wish they want, they're granted. So they can stay in the compound for as long as they want. They don't have to leave right away. You can live on the compound and request anything you want. You can request like $1 million, an elephant, a car, like anything you want, and they will give it to you. And the next round of the competition and the new contestants don't come in until you leave the compound. So that's pretty much the gist of it. I want to preface this by saying I'm not a person who watches reality TV. I don't love reality TV. I find it cringy most of the time, especially like specific things like this where it's like a Love Island situation or like a Survivor kind of thing. It's not my vibe. But when I read this book, I was reading the blurb of it. I was like, you know what, Tanya, you have to like expand your horizons and try new things. And I was like, okay, it seems interesting enough. Like, let's see what this book is about. So I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. I finished it in a day as well. I was like really invested in this book. I felt like the plot really picks up at certain points and it's very like, oh, like I want to see what happens. So yeah, I was really happy that I enjoyed it. I felt like there was a lot of tension throughout the book and the constant like you're on the edge of your seat kind of feeling, like you're on edge and you don't know what's going to happen, which I did enjoy that because I feel like I do love a mystery horror thriller, but I had like little elements of that without the gruesome, gory parts, which I thought I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much, but I really enjoyed it. I honestly kept reading to find out what happens and who wins and like what goes on because you do become kind of connected to the contestants and the dynamics and you want to see like where everyone ends up. I hate that like feeling in stories where it's like there's so many characters but you really only care about one character and so you end up reading it and pushing through it just to see what happens to this one person. I actually was invested in multiple characters and multiple relationships and different dynamics and I was curious to see like where this was going to go with them, so that was really exciting. I think the first 70% of this book has a lot of suspense. There's a lot of drama. It's very much like if you enjoy reality television, the first 70% of this book is going to be so great for you. But then I feel like towards the end, it gets a little bit anticlimactic and a lot of it slows down, especially because there's less contestants and we're like getting down to the nitty gritty of it. So there was that, like definitely a big change in pace in the book. There was a lot of topics discussed in this book, which you'd think it would just be like, oh, this is a reality show. There's the idea of humanity, loyalty, and love. There's also a lot of topics about consumerism and our need for material things and how we sometimes choose the temporary happiness over long-term or important things. I think that was like a main plot topic, was just this idea of like winning challenges and saying things and admitting things and like being this toxic person or being this different version of yourself for material things and for gifts and for that, especially towards the end. I'm not going to say what happens, but there's a character that has to decide between what they came here to do versus the ultimate love and like leaving the compound to have eternal happiness with this person. So I thought that was really interesting. And also the big question of like, how far will you go for the prize, the win, the ultimate satisfaction? I think that was really interesting as well. So yeah, and I also think it was really cool to see how different people cope and deal with high stress situations. There's so many highs and lows in this book, and there's so many like elements of, oh my God, ultimate chaos, and then it kind of dies down. And then I guess like that's normally what happens with situations like this, but it was interesting to see the different personalities deal with this kind of situation and the high stress and the high stakes of it all. I think that was really well done as well. So even though there was a lot of topics discussed of like humanity and consumerism and love and loyalty, honestly, like looking back on it, I don't think I necessarily took away anything from this book. I felt like a lot of this was pure entertainment value and just a good time, which is fine. Like not every book needs to require brain power, but I felt like if you're trying to take away something from this book and maybe like, I don't know, learn something about yourself or learn something about like the world, I wouldn't get that from this book. I felt like a lot of it was just like, this is the story and this is what happens. I think a lot of it didn't really change my perspective on a lot of stuff. I think it just reminded me of who I am and what I would do in this situation and what I believe in. I do think it gets you thinking and it makes you wonder like, oh, what would I do in this situation? But I think for some people this could be relatable and maybe you could learn something. I think overall it's not a book that I would see like, oh my God, this changed my life. Like, no, this is a very like entertainment. This is what's going on and this is the story. I don't think it's a life-changing book in my opinion. I'm definitely glad that I took the risk and picked this book up and decided to give it a chance. I definitely had a great time reading it. I think the story is entertaining. I think the competition is really exciting and there's a lot of drama and it almost feels like you're watching a season of a reality show. Like it definitely feels like that. I was debating giving this a 4-star, but I ended up giving it a 3-star just because I don't think I would reread this. So because I didn't think I was going to read it again, or it's not like the first book I would recommend to people, I feel like it's a very specific target audience that I would recommend this to. I decided to give it a 3, which is not a bad thing. Also, I think this was a perfect summer read. Very fast-paced, lots of drama, lots of entertainment value. So if you're looking for a book to read in the summer, maybe consider this one if it seems like something up your alley. But yeah, I could totally see someone reading this on the beach or like on a vacation, just like chill vibes, picking it up, getting some like entertainment and like fast-paced energy, and then like finishing it in like a day. Like it's literally perfect. So yeah, that was The Compound. The next book I ended up reading was Murder at Holly House. And the reason I picked this up now is because my mom had just read it and it was on my list for 26 or 2026. And I was like, oh, like, was it a good book? And she liked it. So I was like, okay, like I might as well read it now and get it out of the way. So this was the next book I read. And pretty much this is about one detective. His name is Frank Grasby. And pretty much there's a guy, he ends up at this person's house, and they discover that there's a dead body in the chimney. And so he kind of goes down this rabbit hole of trying to solve this murder, but then it's also set in this small town, and he's uncovering secrets from all the people in this town and other murders and other investigations that have gone down. So pretty much, yeah, it's one murder mystery that kind of ends up turning into this whole thing. So let's talk about it. I was expecting this to be more of a cozy Christmas murder mystery, but unfortunately it did not feel like that at all. Literally the only Christmas element of this was that the cover looks like it's set in Christmas and the guy was found in a chimney, kind of like how Santa goes down a chimney. That was it. Literally nothing else of it felt Christmassy at all or had any background of Christmas, which is fine. But I think the whole point of it was I was excited because it was going to give me like holiday realness, and it didn't give me any of that. But anyway, I wasn't really into the main character, our lead investigator. He literally had zero skills in solving crime, and it's known that from the very beginning. Like, that is how he's described, as not the best detective, and like he's not good at his job. And so you're just following him around through this whole story, and he uncovers the truths and he gets clues from other people like the whole time. I don't think there's one thing in this story that he uncovers for himself and he's like, I solved it, or I got the hint, or whatever. It's like, no, like people were literally giving him the answers to things, which was like, what is the point of this then? Like it made no sense. Like, he was just there as like for show, but everyone else was like, oh yeah, did you hear about this person? And this person was like this. And then he gets information because people have to blatantly tell him what is going on. Like, I don't know. I didn't like that. Also, like, he just wasn't particularly like witty or funny. He wasn't someone that like felt like, oh, I'm invested in this main character and I want him to solve the crime. He just didn't have any particular characteristic about him that made me feel like, oh, like he's entertaining. Like, he was just a very mundane character. Lots of this book was establishing personality and backstory of the main detective, instead of the actual mystery plot. So there was a lot of rambling. There was a lot of like, he's describing like his family life and his childhood and like these little elements of things about his life and his personality, but like it had nothing to do with the plot and nothing to do with anything. And I felt like a lot of it was because this is going to be a series and there's going to be other books about this main character. It was just a lot of like getting to know him, which was like, I don't care really. I want the murder mystery. I feel like we learn more about a character through his actions and through him being the detective and not him just going on a rambling about his past and like his childhood. I think the premise of the murder was interesting. There was a lot going on. I did get a little confused, especially towards the end, since there's just a lot of characters that build up throughout the story and a lot of backstories. Again, like he ends up uncovering like all these other murder mysteries that happen in this town because they all connect to this one. So we end up meeting so many of the townspeople, and like the people he works for and the government and the other police detectives and all these other people, or like the local pub people. And it just ends up getting a little too chaotic for me. If you are into history, especially like World War II era, I think you would appreciate the war background in this story, because there's tons of it. The history elements play a big part in the developments of the story, and it's pretty much a lot of why the plot is the plot. So if you enjoy like a historical fiction or just like historical elements, especially like that time period of World War II, you would appreciate this book, I feel. There was definitely like twists and turns as to like who was innocent, who was guilty, who can we trust. So I did appreciate that like I wasn't 100% like, oh, this person's like this. It was kind of a gamble between like if we could trust this person or not. But overall, it was an okay book. Like, it was just fine. Like, I think the first half was better than the second half. It just dragged out a lot. I also got a headache towards the end. I feel like that was the issue or the error, is like I finished it in one day and I got a headache and I was like, I can't understand what's going on. Like, I read too much. But I really just wanted to know what happened because I was like, I can't pick this up again for another day. So I ended up giving this a 2-star. It was expecting a different book and I just wanted a different experience out of it, which is okay. But that was Murder at Holly House. Alrighty, guys, we're like really going through this now. The next book I read was the continuation of Vancouver Storm. So I read Gloves Off, which is again with Georgia and Alexi. And pretty much Alexi is like the older, almost retired guy on the team. And he's like the grumpy, I think he's Russian, the grumpy Russian player. And Georgia is the PT, I think, for the team, or one of the head PTs, something like that. Or she's a doctor or whatever. And they have a enemies to lovers thing going on. They're very much like, I don't like you, I don't respect you. And so that is that. I had a feeling I was going to love this book, just because of the little elements that I was seeing with them in The Wingman. And I do love an enemies to lovers. I feel like that's one of my favorites. It's just so much tension. There's so much like relationship development, and the relationship slowly becomes a respectful and lovable thing. So I do appreciate it. I feel like their chemistry and their love was really felt in this story. I love the moments with like each of their parents. I loved like the little moments with like the flowers and how they symbolize how he feels for her. So pretty much, his mom is a florist and they own like a florist shop. And so he knows the definitions of like what each flower represents. And so he would give Georgia flowers depending on like his relationship with her and how he feels about her. And then she like caught on to it because his mom gives her a flower book. And so she studies all the flowers. And so she gets to see how he feels about her through these flowers. And I thought that was such a unique little cute element in that. I thought that was really creative. As a girl who also loves shopping and spending money, I related to Georgia so much. I think buying nice things for yourself does feel really good, and it makes you feel just like different, and like it gives like makes your spirits go up. I feel like sometimes like not everything is about the material things, but I do agree with her in the sense that like buying nice things for yourself and spoiling yourself once in a while is an ego boost, and it's a happiness and a serotonin boost. And I did love that about her, and I love that whole message about like loving yourself through how you treat yourself and how you spoil yourself. I think for me, Alexi was a little too mean to Georgia in the first half of the book. Like it was very bully coded and a little too grumpy for me. And I know I say like, oh, I hate when it's enemies to lovers, but he's like nice to her in the beginning. I appreciated that he wasn't, but I think it was just a little too far for me. And it was like, wait, does he actually not like her? Like I was really confused, and I was like, I can't see how he's going to turn into loving her. I think some of the things that he would say to her, or like the things that he would think about her, like assume about her, were just not okay. And I just felt like it was a little too much for me. And I also wish the transition from his hating to loving her was a little more seamless. I feel like we missed a lot of like him slowly falling for her. I felt very choppy. He's seeing who she is and he learns more about her. Like a lot of it is like the assumption that he just assumes that she's a spoiled brat and she gets everything that she wants in life. And then he slowly finds out that like, oh, she actually grew up from nothing and she worked for everything that she has and she doesn't spend as much money as he thought she does. And so like he slowly falls in love with the reality of who she is. And yeah, and it just felt like it like he learns these things about her and he's like, oh, like she's actually not the person that I thought she was. Okay, I love her. And it's like, whoa, like where did the personality come through, you know? I did love that he was very patient with Georgia and let her slowly trust him. Like she definitely has a lot of trust issues, especially with men. And I feel like he was so patient with letting her slowly accept that like, okay, like I can trust this guy. He also like took very good care of her. He would drive her places. He would make sure her car is fixed. He would have her parents stay with her and keep her company while he was away. So I did love that. Like I love a man who just like takes care of the girl, like even like if she doesn't ask for it or if she doesn't want it and she's very independent. He's like, no, like I got you, girl. Like you don't have to worry about that. I love that. I loved Georgia. I think her humor was great. And I think she was portrayed as this very like hardworking person, doesn't need any excuse or any favors from people. And she doesn't like people taking care of her. But I think she slowly learns to accept that she can take the help and she can not be responsible for everything all the time. And I did love that. I think one thing that bothered me a lot was the amount of times that Alexi would like comment on Georgia's shoes. So like, I think it's implied that he has like some sort of shoe fetish or like a foot fetish. And I think it was just a little too much about like the heels and the shoes. And like, it was a little too much for me. Like they're like, we can move on. Like, I get it. Like you think she spends money on her shoes too much. And like, she isn't supposed to be wearing those kind of shoes as a doctor or like as a PT. But I think like the amount of times that he brings it up or the amount of times that that topic of it is brought up and they like make fun of her for it, it was like, okay, like let's move on. Like I think it was a little overdone. But yeah, I think I was very close to giving this a perfect rating, but I think I enjoyed Rory more than Alexi, just because I feel like Alexi didn't really grow on me until the second half of the book, or like when we started seeing the nicer version of him. I feel like I didn't really like him in the first half, and he didn't start growing on me. Whereas like Rory, like I immediately loved him throughout the whole book. Like there was not a second that I didn't love Rory. Whereas Alexi, like I had to be a little convinced of liking him. But yeah, I ended up giving this a 4-star, and I really liked it. And of course, I'm excited to keep reading the series. So yeah, that was Gloves Off. Alrighty, guys. So after Gloves Off, I decided, there's one more book left in Vancouver Storm. I might as well just read it and finish the series. So I ended up picking up The Wild Card. And this one is about their coach. What's his name? I think it's Tate. Yeah. Coach Tate and the bartender, or like the bar owner, Jordan. And we kind of find out at the end of the last book that Jordan is the daughter of the guy who owns the hockey team. So pretty much in this, Jordan and her dad have an estranged relationship. They don't talk to each other. And Tate is given the responsibility by her dad to like go and check on her at the bar. So Tate doesn't necessarily like Jordan or like know her that well, but his boss is like, you have to go check on my daughter at the bar and make sure she's okay. And so they kind of like have a hate thing going on. But Tate's like a very respectful, nice guy. So like he doesn't show that like Jordan gets on his nerves a little bit. And Jordan doesn't like that Tate has this like, I'm a perfect guy image. So that's pretty much that. I don't normally like the books about the coach or like the older man from a series, but this was probably one of my favorite books, including this kind of MMC where he's like the coach or the older guy. I wasn't sure how I could see Jordan and Tate being together. Like, honestly, I wasn't even thinking that was a possibility, or like where that would even come from, because she doesn't like hockey apparently. So, but I felt like for what we got out of them, I felt like it made sense. I wish we got more moments with them from the previous books to kind of build the tension. Again, like it just kind of felt like it came out of nowhere, and it was just a random thing like, oh, the lady who owns the bar and where all the hockey people go for drinks after, and then the coach. Like, it was just like, where did this come from? Because they don't interact at all throughout the whole series until like the book before there. So I thought maybe this was the book that this should have been developed more, and I felt like this should have been not an afterthought. Like, this should have been thought out more, and we could have gotten more tension building moments from them. But I really liked Jordan. I feel like she seemed to have real dilemmas and real insecurities, and I felt like she was a character that felt very like, oh, like she's actually struggling, and she has so many external issues, but also internal. And I also loved her personality and the amount of times that she was teasing Tate. I thought that was really great. I feel like Tate was really good. I feel like I like that he didn't end up being just like the nice guy that he was perceived in the other books. He had a little bit more depth and more character to him. And there was a lot that we didn't know about him and his secret side of him that can be a little bit more intense and passionate, which I did like that. I love the trope of the FMC taking care of the MMC when no one else will. Tate was like always putting other people first, especially like his daughter and his team and his boss, and he wouldn't put himself first and what he cared about and loved about. And Jordan was there to remind him that like he can also get what he wants out of life, and he doesn't have to sacrifice his happiness for other people, which I love that trope so much. It's such an underrated trope, I feel like. I think there was a few points for me that their chemistry kind of lacked for me a little bit. I don't really know like specifically what it was, but I feel like if we got more of that buildup in the beginning, I felt like we could have really built that tension and that chemistry. But yeah, it just wasn't as satisfying for me. I think there was just moments where like I forgot why they would like each other, or their chemistry wasn't really like building in like an upwards trajectory. I feel like it was kind of like, I don't know. But overall, I think the romance was great. I felt like it was pretty believable for the situation it was in. I feel like this is a very niche, specific example of like a romance or like how people would meet. But I feel like it was relatable and like realistic in what the circumstances were. So yeah, so I ended up giving this a 4-star because I was pleasantly surprised by Tate and Jordan, and I did end up really liking their relationship. Of course, there's like a few things here and there that I didn't really love, but overall, it was a really good book. I think it's one of the better books in the series. So now that I've read the whole series, I'm going to rate my favorite books in the order of which they're my favorite. So my favorite books are, number 1 for me was The Fake Out. Number 2 was Gloves Off. Number 3 was The Wild Card. Number 4 was The Wingman. And number 5 was Behind the Net. I think Rory was just so amazing and so great, and I loved him, and I think he was my favorite. Not only was he my favorite main male character, but I felt like it was also my favorite female character, and also I just loved the book. Like, it was such a well-written book, and I loved the story, and I think the plot was really well done. I think it was just the best book overall, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm really excited to read more Stephanie Archer books. I feel like this was a great introduction to her and her world and her writing capabilities. And I definitely will give her other books a chance. So, yeah, that was The Wild Card. Alrighty, everyone. So, the next book that I read was Hideaway. And this was a continuation of a series that I started last month, I think, Corrupt. So I was like, let me continue it. I did kind of like that book, so I was like, maybe the series does get better. So I picked up Hideaway. And this is about Kai and Banks. And Kai is one of the horsemen that we know from Corrupt. And Banks is a new girl that we meet in the story. So yeah, I had a feeling I was going to like this book than the first book just because I did love Kai more and I liked him from the first book. And I was like, oh, I feel like I'm going to like him the most out of all of the characters. So yeah, I love his protective energy. He has a kind heart. He also treats women the best, I feel like. He has the most like respectful energy towards women, which I appreciated. I think the romance and the connection was better in this one, and I like the flashback scenes from when they were younger. I feel like it really develops their chemistry and like their history, and I love a flashback when it's done well, and I felt like it was done well in this. I also love like the sneaking around trope where it's like no one can know we're together, so let's sneak around and like pretend that we don't know each other. I love that because Banks, we find out, ends up being one of the horsemen's relatives. I'm not going to say which one or whatever, but yeah, so no one can know. So yeah, I think some things in the plot fell flat for me a little bit. One was that he didn't know that this person was one of his friends' sisters until like almost the end of the book. So Kai goes through this whole book like talking to Banks and falling in love with her and like sneaking around with her. But it doesn't click to him like why she's being so secretive or what the tea is with her until the end of the book. And I'm like, you've known these 4 horsemen your whole life. These are like your brothers. And you have access to like people and resources to find information. And you're telling me you couldn't put 2 and 2 together that this is his sister or whatever. Like, I don't know. It kind of like was a little unrealistic to me, especially because Kai is supposed to be like the one on top of everything. Like he's supposed to be like the guy who just like gets it. And I was like, this is the thing that you are not getting. Like, I don't know. So Penelope Douglas made him very aloof in this book and very just like not paying attention to anything and very like in his own world. And I did not get that vibe from him from the first book, which was kind of like, why would you make him like this? I feel like he was more sharp in the first book. I also think we didn't get enough of their tension and her slowly trusting him. Kai reveals a lot of himself throughout the book to her. Like he's very open about like his family and how he feels emotionally. And she doesn't really open up to him at all. And then all of a sudden, he has to like figure out what her deal is by himself. And I wish we just got a little bit more tension, drawn out scenes. I feel like we needed her to kind of open up to him as well. And we didn't get that. Like she didn't have to tell him anything. Like he just kind of slowly put 2 and 2 together about like who she is and why she is the way she is. And I feel like we should have gotten more of like her just telling him. I feel like that would have made for a stronger story. But I did love their moments together, and I love how he never stopped liking her, even though he knew he wasn't getting the full truth out of her, or he didn't understand fully like what her situation was. I feel like the idea that he never gave up on her, I love that. And I also liked how their intimate moments were sweet, and it wasn't so dark romance coded. Like in the first book. The first book was intense. Like all of the like intimate scenes were very intense. But I felt like in this book there were a lot more sweeter moments, and I felt like it wasn't so aggressively dark coded, which I did appreciate. And I feel like this one was more tasteful, and it was really well written. So if you like a dark romance coded book that isn't so crazy with the more intimate scenes, like, you would probably like this book a lot. I think I'm also just waiting for like that satisfying Penelope Douglas feeling. Because I've read so many of her books, and I was anticipating that I was going to love the series because I love her books and her writing. But I don't know what it is. There's just like something that's not scratching an itch for me. Like, there's just something that's a little different about her writing in this one. So yeah, it just doesn't feel like her usual writing, and it's a little disappointing for me. But overall, I was planning on continuing the series after this anyway, even though I'm not really into Damon and Will, which were the next two books. But Kai so far was definitely my favorite, and I really liked him. And I will say, like, Banks was my favorite female main character out of the two so far. So I ended up giving Hideaway a 3-star. Even though I did like this more than Corrupt, I felt like there was just a lot that I was missing from this one, and I was just expecting or anticipating just a little bit of a different story, especially with Kai. But I still had a good time, and I did end up finishing the series, so you're gonna have to wait for that. But yeah, that was Hideaway. Alrighty, so this next book that I read was Demon Copperhead, and I'm gonna preface this right now and say, and like kind of reveal, that I ended up DNFing this. This is probably one of the most anticipated books for me that I've been wanting to read. For so many months, whenever I would see this book in person anywhere, I would always say, like, I want to read this, I should buy it, and eventually my mom bought it for me because I was just like refusing to buy it for myself. And so I was really, really excited about it. I've heard amazing things about this book. So this DNF, it hurts my soul. Like, honestly, it hurts just having to talk about why I had to DNF this, because I was really looking forward to this one. But let's get into it. This book is a David Copperfield retelling, if I'm not mistaken. So it's Demon Copperhead. This is pretty much a book about a boy's coming of age story and his life from being a child into adulthood, and his struggles and the different dynamics he meets throughout his life, and kind of like the struggles and tribulations he goes through. So yeah, I feel like one of the main things for me was that I couldn't sit down and like focus on the words. And I think mainly this was probably a writing issue for me. It was just not gripping enough. I felt like I was reading it and there was so many words on a page, and I think it was just such a slowly written and paced book, and I think the writing style was just not for me. It was really hard for me to sit there and like continue to read the book. I feel like this was one of those books where you really had to have the mental like capacity to focus on what you're reading, and I don't always love a book like that, especially like in my circumstances. This is not an excuse, but I'm just going to say how it was. There was a lot going on in my house. Like, I was redoing my room, and I was like tired and overwhelmed, and just like there was so much going on. And so people were like in and out of my house. It was loud. Like, I was knocked off my normal routine. So trying to sit there downstairs like and try to focus on this book was just not happening. It was not clicking for me. And also I felt like it took forever to finish a chapter. Like, I was spending at least like 15-20 minutes reading a chapter, and they weren't even that long. So I was like, you know what? Like, this is not a good sign if it's taking me forever to get through it. I think it's also like the word choices were like, you really had to focus, and the characters have an accent, they have a slang. So it's like, you're also trying to understand what they're saying and put things into place. It was like my brain was hurting. I wish it was faster pacing. I wish the book just picked up a little bit more. And I think it was just a writing issue for me mostly. It was a lot of just like the character saying what was going on. It was a lot of like telling and not showing. So he was just like, this happened like this, and this is my relationship with that, and this is how this happened, and I went here and I went there. And I was like, okay, like, we get it. Like, I want it to be more of like a plot, like, let's just keep going. There's a lot of like also moments where he would like go back to like describing things from his past and like giving backstory to things, and it just takes you out of the whole thing. But from what I read, I think I stopped at like around chapter 19. It was good. Like, I think the plot of the story had a lot of potential, and I could see why people rated this book highly. Like, I did like it, and I liked the story. I think I just couldn't put myself in the situation to read it, which was very unfortunate. I did look at like what happens at the end because I was curious, and I was curious about like what happens to the main character because I was invested in him. There is also a lot of characters that are talked about, and we get detailed background for each of the characters, and I wasn't really invested in the other characters besides the main character, Damon. Like, it's important to his story, and it's important to his character development and like his storyline, but we get all these specific details about his friend's parents, and his friend's family members, and this person that he meets at the boys' home, and then all the characters there, and like it was just a lot going on. Like, we even get personal details about like the social worker that was in charge of him at the time, and it was just like a little too much for me. Like, I was really only focused on Damon and like how he was going to progress throughout life, and I feel like we just got a lot of details about these characters. It got a little confusing as well. So yeah, a lot of people were saying, like, I was reading reviews, and a lot of people were saying that you have to get through the beginning and like read until a certain point, and then the book picks up and then it gets more entertaining. But I just felt like I wasn't invested enough, unfortunately, and there wasn't anything motivating me to keep reading. So I did just like end up reading what happens. And I mean, from what I read, the spoiler, I mean, it seems like the book ends up being really well done, and like it ends up being a good story. I just, unfortunately, I couldn't do it. So I fear this is a case where it wasn't the book's fault. It was a me thing. And maybe it's my fault. Maybe I just picked it up at the wrong time. Maybe I should have given it another chance, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I just feel I'm really disappointed in myself, honestly. So, yeah, Demon Copperhead, I ended up DNFing. Which again, it's fine. Like, I don't have to finish every book. I don't have to love every book. But like, if you saw me and how excited I was to read this and how much I anticipated reading this and loving it, oh my God, it's like one of the biggest heartbreaks. But anyway, that was Demon Copperhead. All right, we're getting down to like the last of the books, which is super exciting. So I ended up continuing the Devil's Night series, and so I ended up reading the third book, which was Kill Switch, and this one was about Damon and Winter. And Damon, again, is one of the horsemen, and Winter is kind of a character that we were like given snippets of without like her name being in it, I don't think. But we kind of get a little bit of her backstory from the other books. She is somebody's daughter, some like governor or some like mayor of the town. Like, she comes from a family of like, oh, like she's an important girl. And he falls for her, that kind of thing. So yeah, going into this, I wasn't really into Damon that much. I wasn't really like, he wasn't a character that I thought deserved like a character arc and like a character boosting, because in the first book, he really did the characters wrong. And so I was like, how are we going to put Damon back in the story? But I thought, like, you know, maybe this will change my mind about him. Maybe the story, like, will give me more insight into him. I feel like the writing was better in this book story-wise. I felt like the plot really was entertaining. We get more insight into Damon and Winter's past and why they fall for each other. Those scenes of them, like, from childhood and, like, why they, like, fell for each other were so cute. Like, the innocence, the tension, the buildup, like, I loved that. It was such a cute little backstory. Damon is still not my favorite after reading this. I felt like his book was really tame compared to how he's portrayed in the other books. He's definitely more soft in this book, especially with Winter. It almost feels like a complete different character, and you forget all the things that he does in the first book. I was expecting this to be the worst book. Like, I was expecting this to be the most dark-coded and, like, crazy, but it ended up feeling very tame, and I don't know if I loved that. Like, I kind of wished she stuck with the theme that Damon was the worst and, like, Damon was the most crazy. And it just felt like a different character. Like, where did this character come from? Like, all of a sudden, he went from this guy who had, like, zero respect for women, and then now he has all this respect for her and, like, treats her differently, and he's soft with her, but also just, like, soft in general. Like, it just felt like a complete character shift, and I don't know where that came from. I did like the plot twist in this about Erica and Damon, and I felt like it makes sense for their characters. There's like a huge plot twist between the two of them. Erica's the girl from the first book, and I felt like it made sense, and I felt like it was a good plot twist, and I felt like it was a good like connection between the two characters. And again, I think the writing just isn't reminding me of Penelope Douglas, and it's unfortunate because I'm like waiting for that satisfying like ugh like of course, but it just wasn't like I don't know. Again, like always there's something missing for me and I don't know what it is. Like maybe I have to reread a Penelope Douglas book and understand like why I'm not connecting with it. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like overall this book was the best written out of the three that I had read. But again, not my favorite character. Like I liked Winter a lot. And I think the little moments of them like from childhood were cute, but Damon's just not my favorite. And I was debating giving this a 4, but I felt like Damon was just my least favorite, so I ended up giving it a 3, which is fine. But yeah, I felt like he wasn't my favorite, and there was a lot of like disconnecting things for me in terms of his character that I just didn't love. So yeah, that was Kill Switch. Alrighty, guys, we're on to the last book. So of course we're going to talk about the last book in The Devil's Night, which is Nightfall, and this is with Will and Emery. Will is the last horseman that we get his story on, and Emery is the sister of a police officer, who we like this police officer guy, like her brother kind of like doesn't like the horsemen or whatever, so we get that dynamic. So yeah, again, I wasn't really excited about this book that much because I really didn't love Will that much. He wasn't a character that I was excited to hear his story about. But I was curious again if this book would change my mind. Maybe I just don't know enough about him. I think this book had a lot of potential. I really liked Will and Emery's story and how he was sweet to her, but she didn't feel like she deserved his love. She goes through a lot of like emotional things and a lot of internal stuff, and pretty much the whole book you get like their backstory, like you get past and present, and in their backstory like they knew each other from school, and she always felt like she didn't deserve love from the abuse that she was getting at home from her brother, so she didn't think like she was good enough for Will, and Will was just always stuck by her side and was always cared about her and like didn't care that she didn't have that self-love because he was going to give that for her. I wish we got more scenes with them. We get a lot of the other characters because so much is happening at once. So in the present day, Will and Emery are in this like, I want to say kind of like a prison kind of vibe, but it's like a place where really rich, high up people send their kids to kind of reset. And if they're like acting out in society. And so Emery wakes up here and she has no idea how she ended up in this place. And then she finds that Will is there and Will has been there. And there's other characters there, and there's kind of like this like Lord of the Flies thing going on where there's like one guy who's like the main huncho kind of vibe, and then these other characters that kind of like follow his lead, and then they all have to survive, and it's like this weird thing. So we're getting that stuff, and then we're getting the characters from the past books, so there was just a lot going on and a lot of characters, and so we didn't really get a lot of Will and Emery moments because we're getting them trying to survive this like prison kind of thing and like trying to escape and whatever. I felt like out of all 4 books, this was the least spicy. There was the least intimate scenes in this, which is like, okay, but also you're going into this series expecting that and kind of anticipating and wanting that. So there was that. The last couple of chapters just felt like a drama movie in a bad way. Like so much of it was just like, so much was happening, and then because we have this present moment and then the past characters, she's kind of has to like tie everything together. And she was just trying, I felt like Penelope Douglas was trying to have this like big crazy ending and like this like whole like Avengers Endgame kind of ending sequence where it's like this whole crazy war and everyone comes together. It just felt like too much for me. It was like, okay, what's going on? Like this is too chaotic. So yeah, it was just like tying up loose ends and trying to connect like Will and Emery's present characters and like what they're going through with like their hometown friends. It was just too much going on. And like all of their parents were involved. It was just a little too much. My favorite parts were the jealousy ones between Emery and Will, because like in this Lord of the Flies jail situation, like there seems like the main guy who's kind of in charge, he kind of has this thing with Emery and like he is interested in her, and like we get these little moments between like the jealousy parts. And then also Will and, oh my God, I'm forgetting her name, but there's another girl that Will is with, and like she's in the friend group, and she comes to the prison jail cell, and then Emery gets jealous of their dynamic, so it's just like a lot of jealousy, and I did love those parts, and I wish there was more of them. I wish we were focused more on them falling for each other again and forgiving each other, rather than this like adventure plot of them like trying to escape the prison thing and like figuring out who put Emery here and what's going on. There was too much going on. There was a lot of like, we find out all of the reasons behind why they were suffering and going through all of these things in the 4 books. And I wish it was just focused on like Will and Emery. I feel like that would have been a better story. I was also skimming a lot, I felt like, in this book, because there's just a lot of new characters that I didn't care about and like just didn't do anything for me or for the plot really. So yeah, I ended up giving this a 2-star. This was my least favorite book out of all of them. I loved the idea of Will and Emery's story a lot, but there just wasn't enough of them, and it wasn't like enough of them slowly forgiving each other and loving each other again. Like, it just happens very fast, and there's just so much going on. So yeah, I ended up giving this a 2-star, but overall, I think this series for me was just okay. Like, I think this wouldn't be the first series I'd recommend to somebody. Maybe if it was like you're new to dark romance and you want a very introductory series, I think this was a good start for some people. Yeah, I think this one wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my favorite series. I feel like there's way better options out there. This isn't like my end with Penelope Douglas. I feel like maybe this just wasn't my favorite series out of her. But I'm definitely going to give her more chances. I don't know if she's still writing or like coming out with books, but like I will keep trying to pick up her books. But I don't know. I don't know what it was with this one. It was just not vibing for me, which is fine. But yeah, that was Nightfall. Alrighty, everyone. So that was my books that I read in June. Like I said before, I feel like this particularly wasn't a really great reading month for me. I feel like there was some books that were okay, and then a lot of them were just kind of meh for me, which is fine, like it happens. But I did end up finishing 2 series this month, which was really great. But yeah, let me know if there's any books that piqued your interest or any that you've read. Let me know how you felt about them. I'm excited for July. I feel like I might slow down a little bit for the rest of the year, but we'll see, because I have a lot going on at the moment, but all exciting things. In due time, you will know. But yeah, so those are my June reads, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.